Chapter 6. Up for a couple's game night? Wandering through the rows of their neighborhood flower shop, Ryan eyed all the bright colors of the leaves and petals, with the earthy scent of soil mixed with the sweet smell of the blooms, sparking creativity. She envisioned their spacious backyard transformed into a green sanctum, a zen escape to counter their high-fuel job. That morning, when she had gone on and on about her ambitious garden plans, Sophie seemed indifferent at first. "Go wild. Just don't grow any weed back there." She barely glanced up from her cup of coffee. "Roger that. No ganja in the garden." But then Sophie had surprised her, adding, "Actually, some indica does sound nice right about now." With a cheeky grin, she strutted off before Ryan could even comment on this new discovery. The idea of her indulging a little made Ryan smile. Rounding a corner, a planter resembling the one her Mama Cora had given her years before caught her eye. It was bittersweet nostalgia, remembering the cherished gift destroyed in a police raid. She approached it, running her hand along its smooth surface. Much bigger than Cora's gift, she imagined Sophie's reaction if she lugged this giant home, given that she had walked over here from their brownstone. Zoning out and debating if she could carry this large thing on her back, Ryan was caught off guard by her phone's ringtone. She madly searched her bag for the device and saw that it was her personal one and not her. "Issued work phone." Iris's name lit up the screen, giving her a pause. Her thumb hovered over the answer button as she procrastinated. She had dodged a couple of her calls that week and knew that if she did not want to upset her bestie or have her friends sick the cops on her, she'd have to answer. With a sigh, she finally took the call. Before she could even utter a hello, Iris's voice was loud through the speaker. "Ryan, where the hell have you been? And don't tell me any cult because I know you. You don't follow directions well enough for that." Feeling only mildly offended, Ryan scrunched her face. "Well, hello to you too, bestie. How are you?" "Why haven't I spoken to you in over a month? Are you messing around with Angelique's ass again?" "No, I am not. You know this, Risty." "I don't know this because you've been avoiding me." Still browsing the plant pots, Ryan sighed. "I've been busy trying to get my shit together, you know." "And you couldn't reach out to me or return my calls or texts?" Iris's voice was fused with hurt and frustration. Wow, way to make a girl feel guilty, Ryan thought. Iris was the only family she had, even if not by blood. When shit hit the fan, she was the only one there for her. The sole visitor during her time in prison. The memory of Iris's anger and hysteria when she got locked up, and the miracle of her release, the details of which Iris remained still unaware, were still fresh in her mind. She had made Ryan promise to get her life together, vowing to be there every step of the way, and disappearing for weeks was definitely not part of the plan. "Ryan, are you even listening to me?" Iris's voice snapped her back to the present. Yes. "I'm sorry, Riss," she apologized, navigating the store's aisles, trying not to bump into other shoppers. "Girl, what's going on? You know you can tell me anything." Ryan debated internally, unsure of what to share or how to share it. So the truth is, I met a girl," she began. "You met a girl?" Iris repeated. "Yep, I met a girl and fell in love," she confirmed uncertainly. "Love?" Iris said. Doing her best Soulja Boy impression, Ryan looked to the ceiling in frustration about her reporter friend's parroting behavior. "Yes, Iris. I met a girl, fell in love, and we got married." Then there was silence, a loud silence. Ryan pulled the phone back to check if the call was still connected. "Hello, Iris?" "Yeah, I'm here," Iris finally said something. "I'm sorry, I blanked out." She started chuckling. I thought I heard you say you were married. Finding a quiet corner in the store, Ryan stated, Riss, I am married. Her voice was clear and serious. What? Ryan, stop lying. I'm not, I swear. What? How? When did you get married? Why am I just hearing about this now? It kind of happened all of a sudden. It was sprung on me. How the hell is getting married an all of a sudden thing and sprung on your ass? Ryan wrecked her brain, trying to figure out what to tell her best friend. She couldn't exactly divulge the truth about her organized marriage, the agency, or her new life as a secret operative. But she knew she owed Iris an explanation, or at least a convincing cover story. So I was at the club with some co-workers of mine from the IT department, and I was trying to get the bartender's attention when I accidentally elbowed this woman in the face. I'm talking a full-on WWE style, do you smell what The Rock is cooking elbow to the mouth. You know how strong my elbows are? Iris let out a snort of laughter, and Ryan could picture her shaking her head in disbelief. So anyway, her lips started bleeding like crazy, and I thought she was going to kill me right then and there. I grabbed a handful of napkins and started dabbing at her face, apologizing like crazy. I must have looked like a complete lunatic touching her like that, but she was actually pretty cool about it. She said she'd forgive me if I bought her a drink and danced with her for the rest of the night. I figured it was a small price to pay for not getting my ass kicked. Ryan paused, remembering what actually happened that night, which was more than just a bloody lip. We ended up talking and laughing for hours, and I knew I had to see her again. I don't know, it felt right. I asked for her number, and the rest is history. We both knew that what was happening was something rare. And when you know, right? So Sophie asked me to marry her, and I had the idea to just go to the town hall and get a marriage license. And that's that. I moved in with her naturally after that. There was a pause as Iris processed Ryan's words. So her name is Sophie? Yeah, Sophie Moore, but she took my last name, so she's Sophie Wilder now. Ryan, this sounds crazy. I know, but you have to admit, it's totally me, right? Ryan asked, trying to inject some humor. Getting married? No, that's not you. Exhaling loudly, Ryan dragged her fingers through her messy, wavy hair. Well, that was before I knew Sophie. Come on, Riss, you gotta believe me. Sophie is different. I've never met anyone like her. She makes me feel like I'm the only one who matters. The love I have for her scares me sometimes, but I swear to you, it's real. Ryan surprised herself by how easily she was able to roll the words feelings and love off her tongue when talking about her new partner. She was met with dead air for a minute, knowing Iris was likely analyzing it all in that big brain of hers. Remember when you first found out about my hacking? You were so disappointed in me, Riss. I could see it in your eyes, even though you tried to hide it. I wasn't disappointed in you, Rye. I was worried, Iris breathed out. I didn't want to see you go down a path that could ruin your life. I know, and you were right. Those choices almost cost me everything. I mean, it practically did for a while. But meeting Sophie, it's like a second chance, you know? A chance to start over, to do things differently. But she could practically hear the gears turning in Iris's head. Okay, tell me all about this Sophie woman, she said at last, her journalistic curiosity coming out. And don't leave anything out. Ryan pumped her fist in the air, not caring that people were looking at her like she was tweaking. Riss, she's amazing, sexy as ever, and tall as hell too, which isn't a bad thing in the bedroom, you know. The underground poker room was a world unto itself, a dark den of vice and ambition, where the air was contaminated with scents of expensive cigars, top-shelf liquor, and the unmistakable taste of danger. Sophie cruised the space with the skill of a born predator, her emerald dress clinging like a second skin as she pranced past the tables, drawing appreciative glances and faint comments from the sleazeball players. At the bar, Ryan nursed a drink, her eyes never leaving her partner as she worked the room. To the casual viewer, she might have appeared to be another bored bodyguard dressed in a black turtleneck, dark shades, and slim black trousers. But beneath her carefully cultivated air of nonchalance, her mind was incisive, constantly assessing the room for potential threats. When Sophie took her seat at the high-stakes table, Ryan tapped the QEC device in her ear, a new, much smaller one that Luke had sent them to test in the field. It was a departure from their usual design, but this micro one allowed for more discreet communication in situations like this. "I've got eyes on the room." Ryan's voice was low as she spoke. "No sign of our target yet." Sophie acknowledged the message with a small nod, her attention focused on the cards being dealt in front of her. She knew that somewhere in this room, a man known only as Ghost was waiting for her signal, ready to provide the critical intel that could bring down the Russian mob's entire drug trafficking operation. Her eyes flickered across the table, taking in the tells and ticks of her opponents as she casually tossed a few chips into the pot. A knowing little smile toyed with the edges of her lips, a tactical appearance to unsettle and entice those around her. "I'll see your bet and raise you 500. Her voice was sweet and dangerous, like cherries and whiskey. Dmitri, the man across from her, a heavy-set Russian with a beard hiding his lips, narrowed his eyes trying to read her bluff. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs slowly, which drew lustful looks from around the table. Her fingers toyed with her chips, stacking and unstacking them in hypnotic patterns as she waited for the other players to make their moves. Sophie blinked, activating the smart contact lenses she wore. Instantly, her vision was overlaid with an extended reality display, providing a wealth of information about her opponents. Floating above each player's head were readouts of their vital signs, stress levels, and microexpressions. She focused on Dmitri, the display highlighting the dilation of his pupils and the increased perspiration on his brow as he considered his cards. The lenses analyzed his body language, suggesting that he was bluffing. His confidence was a front. With this insider knowledge, she adjusted her own strategy. "So, Dmitri," Sophie turned her attention to him, "I hear you're the man to talk to about certain business opportunities in the city." Dmitri grunted, eyes never leaving his cards. "Depends on how you say the opportunity." His accent was thick. "Oh, I think you'll find my proposition quite lucrative. Or sexy." She leaned forward, sharing some Russian of her own. "But perhaps we should discuss the details somewhere more private, away from prying eyes and loose lips." She looked around the table and saw the other players shift uncomfortably, suddenly aware of the undercurrents of power and intrigue revolving beneath the surface of the game. "Laying it on a bit thick there, aren't you, Sophie?" Ryan gave a flat stare over to the table before taking a sip of her drink to hide her annoyance. The Russian seemed to be eating it up, staring at Sophie's exposed neck, his tongue darting out to wet his lips. Ryan took another sip of her drink and turned away from the table. With a disgruntled sigh, she forced herself to focus on the rest of the room. Meanwhile, Sophie kept her eyes locked on Dmitri as she waited for his response. She watched him consider her offer, scratching his beard. Finally, he nodded. "Very well." He pushed his chips into the center of the table. "I call." Sophie gave a sneaky, cat-like smile, making the hair on the other player's neck stand up. She laid her cards down on the table, revealing a straight flush that left her opponents stunned and speechless. As she raked in her winnings, she caught movement out of the corner of her eye. A man in a dark suit, his face hidden by shadows, slipped through the crowd and disappeared into a back room. Ghost. She kept her expression carefully neutral. She had played her hand perfectly. Now all that remained was to see if her gamble would pay off. Abruptly, out of nowhere, the poker room exploded into shouts and gunfire as the doors burst open. A group of heavily armed men stormed in, their faces masked by dark gas masks, their weapons trained on everyone in the room. "Nobody moves," one of them yelled through the mask, his voice muffled with an accent, the words punctuated by the click of a gun being cocked. "This is a takeover." The once orderly room turned into chaos. People searching for cover amidst overturned tables and chairs, their panicked cries mixed in with the rough bark of gunfire. Sophie hit the ground, the carpet rough against her cheek, as she reached for the small pistol strapped to her thigh. Ryan jumped into motion, striking as fast as a cheetah pouncing on its next meal. She rushed the gunmen, dodging their shots flawlessly. "Sophie, what's happening?" Her voice crackled over the earpiece, barely audible over the gunfire and screams. But before Sophie could respond, an erupt of static filled her ear, followed by the unmistakable sound of a sports commentator. "The bases are loaded. 2 outs, bottom of the 9th. The Mets are down by 1, but they've got their best hitter at the plate. Can he deliver in the clutch?" Sophie cursed under her breath, realizing their QEC signal had been intercepted by a local baseball game broadcast. She tapped her earpiece frantically, trying to regain the connection with Ryan. "Ryan, can you hear me?" "Soph, I can you, what's ing with the Ryan's voice faded in and out. "The signal's been hijacked by a damn baseball game," Sophie yelled, ducking as fresh bullets flew overhead. "I've lost visual on Ghost. Do you have eyes on him?" But Ryan's response was lost in white noise, the commentator's voices growing louder and more excited. "And it's a long fly ball to deep center field. Martinez is racing back. He leaps and makes the catch. The Gotham Mets are out of the inning." Sophie ripped the useless earpiece out with frustration. She was cut off, with no hope of backup or support. The mission had gone sideways, and now she was on her own, fighting for her life against armed thugs, with no way to communicate with her partner. As the gunfire intensified, Sophie knew she had to act fast. Ghost was out there somewhere, pinned down and in danger, and she was his only hope. She risked a glance from behind a table, scanning for any sign of him. The once well-decorated room was now a war zone, with gunpowder and blood, the carpet littered with shattered glass and casings. She landed on a figure huddled behind the bar. Ghost? He clutched a small USB drive in trembling hands, no doubt containing the critical evidence needed to bring down the mob. She weighed her options, outgunned and outnumbered. Ryan cut off, ally paralyzed with fear. But she couldn't let Ghost fall into enemy hands, couldn't let the vital information be lost. She jumped from behind the table, pounding toward him. She wove through the chaos, leaping over fallen bodies. The instant her fingers barely touched Ghost's sleeve, a white-hot sting sliced across her upper arm. A bullet had simply grazed her. She sucked air through her teeth, stumbling forward from the hit, but she pushed on, crashing onto her knees next to Ghost, clamping her hand over the wound as blood seeped through her fingers. "Ghost, we gotta go." The words tore from her throat, desperate and ragged, as she grabbed his arm with her good hand, hauling him up with pure adrenaline power. But he ripped his arm away. "I can't leave now. I'm so close to the last piece of evidence. I must see this through." Sophie opened her mouth to argue, to scream they'd be dead if they stayed, but another barrage of shots broke out around them. Chewing up the carpet at their feet, clenching her teeth against the pain, she lunged forward, tackling Ghost behind a pillar as the deadly firestorm continued. On the other side of the room, Ryan battled the assailants fiercely, striking out with brutal punches and kicks. She moved through the mess like a hurricane, driven by desperation to reach Sophie and Ghost. But as the fight raged on, panic crept in as she realized she had no clue what Sophie's plan was, or if she even had one since she was unable to communicate with her. In an impulsive moment, Ryan broke from the group and sprinted toward the pillar, where Sophie and Ghost hunkered down. While running, her foot snagged on a fallen chair, sending her crashing to the bloody floor. The wind rushed from her lungs on impact as her gun skidded away. Disoriented, she raised her head to see the bad guy's firearms targeted at her in her vulnerable position. Time seemed to slow. Ryan's eyes darted around frantically, searching for an escape, a weapon, anything to turn the tide. Her eyes landed on a fallen enemy nearby, his lifeless hand still clutching his gun. Without thought, she lunged for the weapon, her fingers closing around the clutch as the others opened fire. Rolling to the side, she came up shooting, the unfamiliar gun bucking in her hands as she returned fire. They scattered, giving her exactly enough time to scramble to her feet and dive for cover. Then she spotted a tear gas canister lying abandoned on the floor a few feet away. In a split second of impulsive desperation, Ryan made her choice. She snatched up the canister, pulled the pin, and lobbed it towards the center of the room, ignoring Sophie's distant, frantically waving hands. Sophie knew that using the gas would be too risky and unpredictable in the confined space of the poker room. It could harm innocent bystanders, compromise their escape route, and make it harder for them to secure Ghost and the evidence he carried. But Ryan, caught up in the heat of the moment and her own impulsive need to act, ignored the silent pleas. Thick, choking smoke ejected, patting the air with an acrid mist that burned eyes and lungs. Ryan heard everyone coughing and sputtering as the fumes overwhelmed them, their advance slowing down. When Ryan spotted Sophie across the room again, her eyes were bloodshot and leaking, her face twisted in agony and disbelief, hacking and gagging. She charged forward to reach her, stumbling through the cloud, coughing and choking, her vision blurred by tears and the thick gas. Nearing the pillar where they were hiding, Ryan saw Ghost huddled on the ground, clutching something in his hand close to his chest. Through the smoke and her own panic, she thought she saw the glint of metal, the telltale shape of a detonator. Her mind raced, jumping to the worst possible conclusion. Ghost had been compromised, and he was about to set off a bomb. Without thinking, Ryan raised her gun and fired, trying to aim for Ghost's hand to disarm him. But her inexperience and the confusion of the moment caused her aim to be off. The shot rang out, and Ghost screamed in agony, his hand flying to his neck as he leaned sideways to the ground. When Ryan got closer, her heart in her throat, she realized her mistake. It wasn't a detonator Ghost had been holding, but the USB drive. And now, as Ghost lay bleeding on the ground, the drive was nowhere to be seen, lost in the commotion and the smoke. No, Ryan mumbled, dropping to her knees beside Ghost, her hands shaking as she tried to stem the flow of blood from his shattered hand. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." But it was too late. Ghost's eyes were already glazing over, and his breath came in short, sharp gasps. He looked up at Ryan, betrayal on his face before he went slack, and his body went limp. "What have you done?" Sophie choked out. Yet before she could carry on, a fresh wave of gunmen blasted into the room. "We have to go now." Ryan grabbed Sophie's arm and hauling her to her feet. Together they ran, stumbling and hacking, trying to reach the fresh air outside. Sophie kicked off her heels, abandoning them on the bloody floor as she ran barefoot, the concrete scraping her soles. They ran through a door, finding themselves in an alley that led to an underground tunnel, the sounds of the gunfight fading behind them. As soon as they were clear, Sophie rounded on Ryan. "What the hell were you thinking? Why didn't you listen to me? You put everyone in danger. You killed our lead, and we don't even have the damn drive." Ryan shrank back from getting called out like this, but she held firm. She was just as pissed off and irritated herself. I was trying to protect us. I thought he had a bomb or something. I thought he was going to kill us all. You didn't think at all. You hardly do. You don't always have to play the hero. You don't always have to do things your own way, no matter what the cost. You're the one who told me to be ready for anything. Ryan's voice cracked with emotion. You're the one who said I needed to be prepared to kill if necessary, Gina. Sophie stared at her incredulously, her mouth hanging open. Are you seriously trying to blame this on me right now? I trained you to be ready, not reckless. I taught you to follow orders and trust your partner, but you couldn't even do that. You're not the boss of me, Sophie, Ryan snapped with sarcasm. Newsflash, we're wives, remember? Equal footing, 50-50, all that jazz. Wives, Sophie copied. That's rich coming from you. First, you blame me for teaching you to be ready for anything, and now you're pulling the wife card. She stepped closer to Ryan, with a look in her eye that meant she wasn't playing. Let me make this crystal clear, Ryan. Wives trust each other. Wives listen to each other. Wives have each other's backs. But you're a loose cannon, a liability that I can't afford to have on my team. Ryan recoiled at the words. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but deep down she knew Sophie was right. She had let her impulsiveness and ego get the best of her, and now their mission was in shambles, and their partnership marriage was hanging by a thread. She started, faltering as she searched for the right words. But Sophie only shook her head and turned around, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion and defeat. Boarding the late-night train from their failed mission, they tried to blend in and act normal with the other riders, but their agitated whispers and pissed-off looks proved otherwise. As the train rattled through the city, Ryan attempted to deflect blame. It was that damn QEC device, she groaned, pointing fingers at the faulty tech that had left them cut off from each other at a critical moment. Sophie ignored her, staring firmly out the window at the passing city lights. Her silence only fueled Ryan's frustration. Come on, Soph, you can't just give me the cold shoulder. A few late-night stragglers glanced their way, taking in the couple's tattered formal wear and heated exchange. In Gotham, such sights were not uncommon, and most passengers simply shrugged it off as another lover's dispute or the antics of the city's more peculiar residents. Sophie. Really? Finally, Sophie turned to face Ryan. You ignored my warnings, acted recklessly as usual. What exactly do you want me to say right now? The train reeled to a stop, and a few passengers shuffled on the right as Ryan started to respond. However, she stopped short when she noticed their judgmental looks. Slouching in her seat, she sucked her teeth, silently fuming. Where did they get off listening in on their conversation anyway? The nerve of some people, she thought bitterly to herself. The quiet between them dragged on, the stillness oppressive and choking, until Sophie broke the silence in a whisper that only they could hear. Ghost and the information he had were critical, Ryan. That USB drive contained incriminating files, financial records, names of high-ranking officials on the mob's payroll. And Ghost himself knew even more from being undercover for so long. This could set Black Bat's investigation back by months, maybe even years. You don't think I know that, Sophie? Ryan snapped, her voice rising above the noise of the train. From the way you behaved? No, I don't. The next stop is Fort Gray. The doors will open on the left. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform as you exit. Thank you for riding with us, and have a pleasant day. As they finally arrived at their stop, the chill of the night air seemed to cool some of the heat from their argument. They walked the quiet streets back to their brownstone, the energy between them gradually shifting from angry to contemplative. "I'm not used to relying on others," Ryan admitted, shoving her hands deep into her pockets. "Trust has always been a struggle for me. Growing up in the foster system, I learned early on that the only person I could count on was myself." Sophie listened, her anger slowly giving way to understanding. She sighed. "I get it. I have my own issues with control. My military background, my mutt." She caught herself before she brought up her mother. "It's made it hard for me to let go, to believe that others would have my back." Approaching the front door of their home, the first signs of dawn started to lighten the sky, and a realization settled over them both. If they wanted to succeed in their missions, in this partnership, in this relationship, they needed to learn to communicate better and trust each other fully. "I'm sorry," Ryan said quietly. Sophie pressed her lips into a tight line. Without another word, she unlocked their door and headed upstairs, leaving Ryan alone on the stoop with her thoughts. The hologram of Luke shone brightly, nearly too bright considering their short hours of sleep before the early summons to the command center in their basement. Luke was clearly irritated as he addressed them. Ryan's attempt to pass the blame to the faulty QEC did little to appease him. "Your instructions were clear. Keep Ghost alive and secure the USB drive. I'll have your QEC replaced. But that's not the point. Agent Wilder, your impulsive behavior and disregard for protocol have put this entire operation at risk. I expected better from you." "But sir, I don't want to hear excuses. Your actions have consequences, and it's time you started realizing that. This isn't a game, and you can't just go off script whenever you feel like it." Word by word, Ryan deflated under Luke's reprimand. And Sophie, wise to her partner's difficulties with authorities, spoke up. "It wasn't only on Ryan, sir. I take equal blame as well. I should have been more prepared." Despite their disagreements and Sophie's frustration over Ryan's actions, a part of her felt protective. And she didn't particularly enjoy hearing Luke talk to her wife in this way, even if she understood his perspective. At the end of the day, they were in this together, and presenting a united front was vital, especially given the nature of their work and the scrutiny they were under. If Sophie was honest with herself, she acknowledged why Ryan acted the way she did. Her instinct to take action, those were the same qualities that made her a brilliant agent, even if they could also be liabilities at times. Sophie wished she had more confidence in herself. This wasn't the first time in their short stint of working together that Ryan had gone off script. Just on those other occasions, they hadn't failed the mission. Luke's face briefly lightened at Sophie's display of loyalty, but his stern demeanor remained unchanged. "Although I appreciate that you both watch each other's backs, you still won't be compensated for this job. I expect a complete report on my desk by 1100 hours today. You're dismissed." When his image faded out, Ryan put her head between her legs and looked at the ground. The burden of the failure and the consequences of her made her feel small and vulnerable. She had never meant for things to go so wrong. Sophie, seeing her partner's distress, placed a tentative hand on her back and started rubbing it in slow, comforting circles. The gesture was unexpected, but Ryan leaned into the touch, craving the comfort it provided. "I didn't mean to kill Ghost." She couldn't bring herself to look at Sophie, afraid of what she might see in her eyes. "I know you didn't." Ryan looked up and studied Sophie's face, tracing the lines of her features, searching for any sign of judgment or condemnation, but all she found was compassion and support. "Thanks for having my back." Sophie bobbed her head and tried to throw an olive branch. "What are wives for, right?" she offered with a smile. Ryan offered a small smile in return, but it looked like it hurt. She smacked her hands on her knees and stood up, heading upstairs, leaving Sophie alone in the command center. Rummaging through the fridge, Sophie's attention was pulled away from finding something to snack on when the doorbell rang loudly through the house. Ryan was out back, tending to her new garden, an activity she had learned was her wife's go-to for de-stressing. Approaching the door with some dread, she feared it might be their overly friendly, weird-ass neighbor Alice again. But as she peered through the peephole, she spotted an unfamiliar petite woman on the stoop, looking around at the other houses on the block with curiosity. Can I help you? Yes, I'm looking for Ryan and, a Sophie? And who are you? Excuse me. You heard me. Sophie's stance remained firm. The woman let out a bitter chuckle. So Ryan didn't tell you who I was? No. Sophie's patience was wearing thin. And if you don't start talking quickly, I'm calling the cops. The woman cracked a grin, as if she were daring Sophie to make that call. Her eyes lit up, ready for whatever was coming next. Sophie slid the backyard door open with a loud thud, her eyes briefly landing on the oversized potted plant that had mysteriously appeared in their yard. She made a mental note to ask Ryan about it later, but for now, there were more pressing matters at hand. Ryan was crouched down, diligently pulling weeds from the ground. Without a word, Sophie grabbed her arm and pulled her towards the house, causing Ryan to toss her garden gloves aside in confusion quickly. Hey, what the hell? You know, this whole marriage thing doesn't give you the right to manhandle me, Ryan grumbled, being led downstairs to their basement. I demand an explanation, woman. Once they were in the command center, Sophie turned around to face her wife. Ryan, why is there a woman on our front step claiming to be your best friend? Some woman named Iris is here, and apparently you told her where we live, Sophie went on, getting more annoyed with every word. The light bulb went off for Ryan. Oh shit, Iris is here? Why did you share our address? Sophie crossed her arms over her chest. Ryan squirmed, not meeting her eyes. I just wanted her to know I was safe. She kept asking questions the other day, demanding to know that I was actually still in the city, but I didn't think she'd pop up like this. Sophie pinched the bridge of her nose. Well, go tell her to go home. What? No, she's my best friend. I'm not doing that. So what are we supposed to tell her? Sophie threw her hands up in frustration. She knows that you're my wife and how we met. What do you mean, how we met? Well, I told her we met at the club. Sophie stared at her, waiting for her to continue. I told her that I accidentally busted and bloodied your lip, and from there you fell madly in love with me. We got married shortly afterward, Ryan finished, word rushing out. Yeah, right. What did you really tell her? Sophie laughed, not buying it. That's it. Ryan, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Please, Soph. Just go along with the story. Iris means everything to me. She's the only person I have left in my life. Her frustration began to melt away as she saw Ryan's desperation. Despite the absurdity of the situation, she couldn't bring herself to deny Ryan this small comfort, especially after the last 18 hours they'd had. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually agreeing to this. They finally came upstairs, with Iris still waiting on the porch. As soon as Ryan stepped outside, Iris pulled her into a tight hug, laughing and smacking her on the shoulder. Sophie watched from the side, feeling something flutter inside as Ryan's mood picked up. Girl, your rude-ass wife left me out here for ages. Well, that nice feeling didn't last long. Sophie noticed the skepticism in Iris's eyes, wondering if she had an inkling of what was really going on. Sensing the awkwardness, Ryan quickly stepped in to make the official introduction. She's protective, that's all, but Iris, this is my wife, Sophie. Sophie, meet my best friend, Iris. Iris extended her hand. So, you're the one who supposedly swept my bestie off her feet, huh? Sophie took the hand, shaking it harder than necessary. I guess that's me, huh? It's nice to meet you finally, Iris. Despite being the taller of the two, she shrunk under Iris's stare, now feeling like an imposter in her own home. As they made their way into the house, Sophie hung back, letting the other two take the lead. Ryan glanced back, offering an encouraging smile, but even that couldn't subdue Sophie's nerves. She just knew Iris was onto them, and she feared that one wrong move could unravel their entire story. The three of them got comfy around the table, ready for a round of bullshit. Sophie's suggestion. Having honed her skills at the game during her military days, she knew it would be an ideal icebreaker, allowing them to let their guards down. Right as they were about to start, Iris remembered she'd forgotten something in the car and headed out to grab it. The second the front door slammed shut after her, Ryan looked over at Sophie. Quick, sit on my lap, she urged, patting her thighs. What? Why? To truly sell this whole married couple thing, Ryan explained, already tugging Sophie down onto her lap. Come on, it'll be convincing. She reluctantly obliged, settling onto Ryan's lap, trying to adjust her long legs on top of the shorter ones, just as the front door opened again. Iris stepped inside, landing on the cozy display of affection before her. Ryan's arms were wrapped around Sophie's waist, and Sophie had draped an arm across her shoulders. They appeared every inch the loving pair, though Iris's squint hinted she wasn't fully persuaded. As the game started, Sophie remained guarded, offering only vague answers to Iris's probing questions. When she casually mentioned Sophie's military background and her abrupt departure from the Crows, Sophie's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Ryan's in a silent, "What the fuck?" Ryan merely shrugged, trying to play it cool. She's a journalist, Soph. Finding shit out is her job. No. The last thing she needed was Iris digging into her past and potentially uncovering their ties to Black Bat. She knew the agency's dealings were airtight, but the thought of anyone poking around made her skin crawl. Iris, not one to be deterred, was on a mission. So, Sophie, how did you afford such a swanky place? I mean, it's pretty impressive. Don't be nosy, Iris. But Sophie jumped in, wanting to steer the conversation away from her past. I had a few private security gigs that turned into a long-term contract with a multimillionaire. Pays pretty well. Must be nice, Iris hummed. As the rounds continued, Sophie's competitive spirit came out of hiding. Her earlier reservations gave way to a newfound interest in the game. With a skilled hand, she arranged her cards, her eyes squinting in concentration as she studied Ryan's face for any tells. 2 5s, she slid the cards across the table with a confident smirk. Ryan squinted at her suspiciously before glancing at Iris, who was already struggling to keep up with the fast pace of the game. Unsure, Ryan reached for the pile, only to have Sophie's hand shoot out and stop her. You really think I'd lie about that? Sophie winked and flipped her cards, showing the pair of 5s she'd claimed. Ryan's mouth fell open in shock, while Sophie raked in her winnings, giggling like a madwoman. Leaning closer, she gently nudged Ryan's arm. Here, let me show you how it's done. Her breath was warm and snugly on Ryan's ear. She patiently guided her wife through the intricacies of the game. Ryan was charmed, not only by the strategic elements, but also by the tenderness with which she handled her. Across the table, Iris watched them, her own cards long forgotten. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was something about the way they interacted. She noticed Sophie seemed to anticipate Ryan's every need, her eyes constantly darting towards her wife even as she focused on her own cards. When Ryan's throat went dry from all the laughing and trash talking, Sophie was quick to act, grabbing a glass of water and handing it to her with a brush of their fingers. Iris caught the way Ryan quivered at the contact, leaning into the touch as if craving more. Later, when Ryan's stomach growled, Sophie excused herself from the table. Moments later, she returned with a few Hostess donuts, a favorite of Ryan's that she had learned from their first grocery trip. Here, I can't have you going hungry on me. Before she could even sit back down, Ryan had already torn into one. Sophie cringed at the white powder on her nose, but instead she leaned over to wipe it off her face. She was aware that Iris was following her every move, so she made a point of amplifying her affection whenever she could. When Iris excused herself to use the bathroom, she seized the opportunity to voice her concerns. She doesn't believe us. Sophie's eyes darted towards the hallway. What, of course she does, Ryan countered as she searched for mugs for tea. No, she doesn't. Haven't you seen how she's been looking at us all night? Ryan opened her mouth to argue, but the sound of the toilet flushing cut her off. They both froze, realizing Iris would return any second. Sophie was desperate to convince Iris of their real relationship. Then an idea struck her. Do you trust me? Yeah, of course I do, but what are you... Before she could finish, Sophie rushed forward, pinning her against the counter and capturing her lips in a kiss. Ryan's eyes went wide, but she quickly melted into the embrace, cradling Sophie's jaw. What started as staged quickly morphed into something more passionate and genuine. As their lips moved in sync, the world was forgotten, leaving only the two of them lost in the heat of the moment. Ryan felt her heartbeat kick up when Sophie pushed into her, their clothes doing little to dull the hot energy between them. She whimpered softly when Sophie's tongue outlined her lips, begging for access. She opened her mouth, letting the kiss intensify as their tongues met in a slow, sensual dance. Sophie groaned as her hands roamed Ryan's back, mapping her dips and curves, pulling her closer. As she poured emotion into the kiss, she wanted Iris to believe in their connection, but more than that, something in her wanted Ryan to feel the depth of her feelings, the genuine affection and desire building between them, even if she was unsure of these feelings herself. All that mattered at this moment was feeling Ryan under her hands and her taste. She pulled back slightly, resting her forehead against Ryan's as they both struggled to catch their breath. Her eyes were dark, and all Sophie wanted to do was get lost in them. Ryan's thumb brushed over Sophie's cheek, a move that felt far too intimate for their current situation. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice Iris's return until she cleared her throat loudly, causing them to spring apart. Ryan bit her lip as she met Iris's wise eyes while Sophie struggled to catch her breath, lips swollen and hair tousled. Are y'all gonna do this every time I leave the room? Probably, they answered in unison before dissolving into a giggle. Iris's face took on a whole new look as she zeroed in on Sophie with that intense stare, letting her know it was about to go down. Sophie, can I talk to you alone for a second? Ryan looked confused. Iris, what? I just want to talk one-on-one with your BAE. I promise I'll behave. With a nod, Sophie led her out of Ryan's earshot to the living room. They stood facing each other, a taut silence passing between them before Sophie finally said something. You know, you kind of remind me of my best friend. Oh yeah? How's that? Iris fired back. Diminutive but wildly intimidating for no reason. She had that death stare on lock. Sounds like my kind of chick, not gonna lie. Yeah, she was something. Sophie chuckled to herself with memories. Iris caught that was and raised an eyebrow. Sophie picked up on it and explained. She passed away a while back. Oh, my bad. That's rough. I'm sorry. Iris's face fell. Sophie brushed it off but gave her an appreciative nod. After some silence, Iris finally mustered up what she truly wanted to say. "Thank you." Sophie blinked in surprise. "For what?" "For loving my best friend. Ryan's been through so much, and she doesn't always see how amazing she is. But I think you're the piece that was missing." To say Sophie was shocked would be an understatement. She never anticipated this admission from the woman, particularly after their bumpy beginning. "Ryan's been hurt before," Iris continued seriously, "and I don't want to see that happen again. So I need you to promise me something." Sophie shook her head understandingly. "Don't hurt her. She deserves all the love and happiness in the world. And if you can give her that, then you have my blessing." "I love Ryan." Sophie's own words caught her off guard. "You have nothing to worry about. I promise." Iris searched her face for a long moment before nodding, satisfied with what she saw. They shook hands in silent understanding. When she walked away, Sophie stood rooted to the spot, processing the conversation. Her words about loving Ryan had flowed effortlessly, as if that sentiment had always been there. She had always been guarded with her feelings, but at that moment, the words had spilled out without reluctance. She had meant every word, even though she knew it was part of the act. Or was it? From the kitchen came Iris's playful voice. "Ryan, where's the Uno cards? I'm tired of bullshit. Your wife is too good." Before she could make it out of the kitchen, Sophie went in for an awkward hug with Iris, promising they'd hang out again. As she pulled away, Ryan grabbed her arm and planted another soft but passionate kiss on her. "Night, babe," she whispered. She mumbled goodnight and hightailed it upstairs. She shut the bedroom door and leaned against it. The affection between them, the way Ryan looked at her, it felt real, too real. Shaking it off, she plopped on the bed edge and stared at her phone, turning it over in her hands. Ryan's opening up with Iris hit a nerve. If Ryan could spill their secret, well, a made-up version of it, then maybe it was time for Sophie to do the same and open up to her own family. But her gut twisted at the idea of opening up to her mom. Things had been the worst since she came out, with her mother's staunch faith making it hard to accept Sophie's truth. Picturing Diane's response to the marriage revelation felt like a slap to the face. Just one more way Sophie had wandered from the life her mother had mapped out. Before she could overthink it, she dialed her sister instead. The line rang once, twice. Her mouth went dry, rehearsing what to say. "Hey, Soph. What's up?" "Hey, Jor." Deep breath. "So funny story. I might have gotten married." "What?" Ryan was chilling on the couch. Feet kicked up on the coffee table. Iris plopped down in the armchair across from her. The friends had been shooting the breeze, trading tales, and cracking up over old private jokes. But when the chatter died down, it was still soothing. "So, real talk, Sophie's been good for you, hasn't she?" Iris asked, curious to know. Ryan cracked a grin. "Yeah, she has. I mean, don't get me wrong, she can be a real stickler sometimes, always wanting things done a certain way. She'll throw a fit if she saw my feet on this table, mentioning something crazy about wood and scuffing." She rolled her eyes playfully. "But she gets me, you know? Like, for real gets me." "I can see that. The way she looks at you, Rye, it's like you're the only person in the room. She accepts my flaws and fuck-ups. And you know me, there are plenty of those." Leaning onto her knees, Iris closed the distance. "That's what love is, isn't it? Seeing someone for who they are. And loving them anyway?" "I guess so. It's just, I never thought I'd have that, you know? After everything with Angelique." "Sophie is nothing like Angelique's ass. Believe me, I've seen that from tonight alone." "I know, and that scares me sometimes. Like, she's perfect. What if I screw it up? What if I'm not enough for her?" First of all, no one is perfect. Second, you are enough, Ryan. And Sophie knows that. She loves you for who you are, not who you think you should be. Iris's hands found Ryan's, a silent show of support. I don't know what I did to deserve her, or you, for that matter. I mean it, though. I'm here for you both, no matter what. If anyone tries to come between you two, they'll have to go through me first. Thanks, Riss. I don't know what I'd do without you. Probably get arrested again, Iris smirked. Facts. They both high-fived. So you're a Sophie fan now, huh? After you were eyeing my wife with the stank face like she stole something? Iris shrugged nonchalantly. Well, I warmed up to her, didn't I? Yeah, I guess you did. Now, told you she was fine. What you think? I mean, if you're into freakishly tall assholes who are sweet and attentive to my best friend, then... Iris' eyes flicked upwards. I guess she's okay. Ryan threw a pillow at her, but she laughed too hard to aim properly. Sinking into her mattress, Sophie's body craved rest after a long, hot shower. She sighed, eyes fluttering closed as she willed sleep to take her. But when she began drifting off, a creak opened one eye. She reached under the pillow, fingers closing around her gun. Whipping it out, she pointed it directly at the intruder, only to find herself staring down the barrel at a wide-eyed Ryan. Whoa, easy there, John Wick! Ryan threw her hands up. It's me. Jesus, Ryan, I could have shot you. Sophie lowered the gun and turned the light on. Yeah, no shit. You always sleep with that thing loaded under your pillow? Old habits die hard, I guess. Ryan patted over and plopped down beside her. We really need to work on our trust issues, huh? Yeah. Sophie swallowed. Speaking of, about last night, I'm sorry for how I reacted. I was so frustrated and scared. I don't like failing. Nah, I'm the one who should be apologizing. I was reckless and stupid. I didn't listen to you, and I nearly got us both killed. Ryan grabbed her hand and pulled it in her lap. We both made mistakes, but we need to learn from them and have more faith in each other. In our line of work, that's a luxury we can't always afford. But with each other, we have to try. You're right. And for what it's worth, I do trust you, Soph, more than anyone. Sophie knew how much those words meant coming from Ryan, how much it took for her to say that. I trust you too, Rye, and I promise I'll always have your back, no matter what. They sat in silence for a moment, their hands still intertwined. Then Ryan spoke up, vulnerable. I want to be good at this, at being an agent, a partner. I don't want to let you down. Sophie's free hand came up to cup Ryan's cheek. You could never let me down, Ryan. You're a genius, a goofy one, but a genius nonetheless. Ryan laughed. Goofy, huh? In the best way possible. And you're getting better every day in the field. Soon you'll be running circles around me. Ryan scratched the back of her neck. Thanks, Soph. That means a lot. I mean it. You're amazing, Ryan. Don't ever doubt that. Thank you for everything, for putting up with my crazy, for having my back. Hell, for going along with things with Iris today. Always, Sophie stroked Ryan's cheek. Ryan leaned into the touch, her eyes closing for a second. When she opened them again, she wanted to approach the elephant in the room, but wasn't sure how. So, about that kiss earlier, she began, uncharacteristically shy. I hope it was okay. I know it was for show, but... Yeah, it was okay. I figured we have to get used to doing that anyway, right? Yeah, Sophie trailed off, pausing before continuing. It was nice. Nice? Wow, you sure know how to drop the panties, don't you? Sophie looked away, then back at her and smiled. What I meant was the kiss was more than okay. It was kind of perfect. You're a pretty damn good kisser, Ryan. Like really good. Ryan thought that if Sophie kept looking at her like that, with those eyes all soft and warm, and talking to her in that raspy voice, she wouldn't know how long she could keep pretending this was all an act. Her eyes darted down to those lips. She wanted nothing more than to lean in, to close the space between them and lose herself in the taste of her again. The doorbell's agonizing ring popped their little bubble, snapping them out of the moment. They traded looks, knowing damn well it was too late for any welcome guests. Iris had already texted Ryan, letting her know that she made it home, so it wasn't her. On autopilot, Sophie grabbed her gun again, then fished another one out of the nightstand drawer and tossed it to Ryan. They trudged downstairs, both dressed in their pajamas. As they approached the door, Ryan took the lead, signaling for Sophie to cover her. Sophie nodded, her grip tightening on her gun, as Ryan carefully opened the door. To their surprise, no one was there, only a mysterious package sitting on the doorstep. Ryan frowned, her eyes scanning the empty streets for any signs of movement. What the hell? Sophie stepped forward, eyeing the package. Could be a trap. There's only one way to find out. Ryan reached for the package, carefully examining it for any signs of tampering. Finding none, she brought it downstairs to the command center and placed it on the desk. After carefully examining it and waving their detector over it, she said they were clear. Sophie lowered her weapon, still remaining on edge. What is it? Ryan took a deep breath and opened it, revealing 2 brand new QECs. Luke works fast. I didn't think he'd have our replacements that quick. But Ryan's attention was drawn to the note accompanying the devices. She picked it up, scanning the words, and her face dropped. It's a reminder. This was our first fail. We only have 2 left. She placed the note down with shaking hands. We can't let that happen. I can't go back to prison, Soph. I can't blow this opportunity, this partnership, this. She trailed off, unable to put into words the fear she had. Hey, we won't let that happen. Sophie stepped closer, her hands reaching to grab her shoulders. We're good. Believe me, no more fails. She herself didn't want to be sent to a foreign country, as collateral or worse. Ryan absorbed Sophie's encouragement and the reassurance of her touch. They stood there in each other's arms as the brand new QECs taunted them from the counter.